Regionally, child rights activists are paying keen attention to explicit videos of children being posted on TikTok. And internationally, in Canada, an Ontario man has been found guilty of 3 counts of second-degree murder in the deaths of a woman and 2 of her children east of Toronto, with the presiding judge calling the attacks vicious and brutal. Those are the lead stories. The details of these and other stories in a moment.
Don't let the fear of contracting the coronavirus disease deter you from seeking the medical care you need. At Egolabs, we ensure the safety of our clients and staff with our rigid sanitization routine. This involves the use of ultraviolet lights to effectively rid the air and all surfaces of viruses and bacteria that may be present throughout the lab daily. The light works to rapidly inactivate microorganisms through a physical process that is invisible to human eye. So the next time you need a checkup, don't hesitate to give us a call on 225-7574 to schedule your appointment.
And now, the news in detail. President Irfan Ali, late Thursday, signaled the end of the COVID-19 curfew. Addressing the launch of the latest edition of Guyana Explore magazine, he said that the government was seriously considering lifting the curfew.
What is needed in this stage in dealing with the pandemic are the protocols, ensuring that all the agencies have the sanitation device, ensuring that we continue to educate people on the vaccination program, ensuring that the guidelines and protocols are observed. But for sure, we can't continue with a prolonged curfew. And it is my hope and intention that that curfew can be removed once the necessary steps are followed.
The curfew was instituted in March 2020 when Guyana had recorded its first COVID-19 death. It was expected to be a virus control mechanism, but it has been mostly violated by businesses or seldom enforced by police. President Irfan Ali on Thursday asked the Guyana Defence Force to put in place a plan to protect the gas-to-shore pipeline. He issued the call at the opening of the Guyana Defence Force's annual officers' conference.
There will be a pipeline, a gas pipeline that is coming into Guyana. You look around the world and see how gas pipeline can become an instrument of threat to destabilize regions and countries. So we have to have our own strategy dealing with the protection of these assets, the management of these assets. How do we respond if there is an unforeseen challenge out there? We can't wait in the unlikely event that something happens and then we are hustling for a response. We have to have a strategic approach to all of these things now.
The gas-to-shore pipeline is expected to run more than 200 miles from the Liza 1 well to West Coast Demerara shore, and then run along the west bank of Demerara to Wales, where a gas-powered electricity plant will be built. The President says the Guyana Defence Force also needs to position itself to deal with the opening of new roads. The opposition, a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change, APNU plus AFC, says that its parliamentarian, Sherrod Duncan, has not been properly suspended. He was suspended for disorderly conduct after he refused repeated calls by House Speaker Manzoor Nadir to stop being abusive. Angered at Minister Nigel Dharamlal telling a female opposition parliamentarian that she needed a dildo, Mr. Duncan called him nasty and accused Mr. Nadir of condoning his behavior. Opposition frontbencher, attorney-at-law Kemraj Ramchitan says that House Speaker Manzoor Nadir asked Minister of Governance and Parliamentary Affairs Gail Teixeira to move a motion for the suspension of Mr. Duncan while the House was still in the Committee of Supply.
In relation to, and this is my final observation, to the matter of suspension of Mr. Sherrod Duncan, well, I am making the observation that it happened in the Committee of Supply rather than the larger National Assembly when the suspension ought to be.
Thank you very much. Yes.
Opposition Chief Whip Christopher Jones also formally wrote the Speaker on the wrong application of the standing orders. Mr. Ramjitan also sought to assure the House that opposition parliamentarians will try their best not to cause a repeat of Wednesday's disorderly conduct.
Mr. Speaker, we, on this side of the House, would like to share our concerns with what we regard as a deterioration of the debate that occurred yesterday and reached a certain height that created problems for the House. And we will strive as best as possible to ensure that there be a maturity in the debate, and we will expect or are urging that we get that also from the government side.
APNU Plus AFC parliamentarian Kamraj Ramjitan. Minister of Local Government Nigel Dharamlal late last night withdrew all offending remarks in the House, that should be late Wednesday night, withdrew all offending remarks in the House during the consideration of the 2022 national budgetary estimates. He did not specifically refer to his remarks about a dildo to a female opposition parliamentarian. He did not apologize, and the withdrawal of the offensive comments was not unconditional.
This House had some issues which we believe that became very heated. And so I'd like to, Mr. Speaker, to indicate to you that if I had said anything that was misconstrued, that it was not my intention to make those statements to that effect. And if there were statements which were also unparliamentary on my part during the course of the interrogations, then I would like to withdraw them as well.
The withdrawal of the statements was done in the absence of a Partnership for National Unity plus Alliance for Change parliamentarians who had walked out of the remainder of Wednesday's sitting after their parliamentarian Sherrod Duncan was suspended. Mr. Dharamlal later on, in his Facebook page, explicitly apologized to anyone who felt offended. Health Minister Dr. Frank Anthony says that many people in Guyana's interior regions do not want to take a COVID vaccine.
We have been sending out areas in the interior locations to administer vaccines, but unfortunately in some of the villages that we've gone to, there is a lot of vaccine hesitancy. And despite going in several times and offering education, it still remains a concern and a problem because people are not taking the vaccines. So it's not a matter of access. The vaccines are available, but because of misinformation, I think we're having that challenge.
Dr. Anthony says that more money has been allocated in the 2022 national budget to intensify vaccinations across Guyana, including the interior regions.
Nevertheless, this year we have allocated enough monies to continue these campaigns where we'll be sending out teams to do vaccination in various communities across the interior.
The number of active COVID-19 cases continues to drop steadily. Official figures from the Health Ministry show that there are now 3,127 active cases, with 3,038 ordered to isolate themselves at home to stop spreading the virus. Of the 89 persons who are hospitalized, 18 are very sick and are receiving intensive care. Within the past 24 hours, 160 new cases have been recorded. And now we look at regional news. A top Barbados tourism industry is raising concern about the haphazard implementation of COVID-19 protocols at the Grantley Adams International Airport. The Barbados Tourism Authority wants rapid tests to be accepted rather than only PCR tests. We have details from Barbados Today.
Tourism and healthcare officials are being chided for what has been described as inefficient protocols at the Grantley Adams International Airport that are causing major headaches for visitors to the island. This, as chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Renee Coppin, warned that industry players are at their wits' end over lack of transparency and clarity regarding the systems that have been governing the entry of airline passengers over the last 2 years.
We have used COVID as a scapegoat for what is fundamentally lack of proper systems and processes in the management of things on this island. And we continue to have, as if we are in Groundhog Day, it's become a running joke for us in our board meetings, that we continue to have the same set of complaints regarding the ease of entry into the island, the treatment to the testing protocols, the transparency of the protocols, and the way that people are entering through and even the utilization of the Safe app. We continue to have issues with all of these things, and they're not being addressed consistently. And these are things that we've asked as an association to have addressed over the last 2 years. And we continue in 2022 to have some of the same problems that we had in 2020 when we started this pandemic. And we are at the point where we feel that this is no longer something we can continue to be silent about.
Current protocols require vaccinated travelers to present a negative PCR test taken within a 72-hour period prior to travel, or a rapid PCR test to avoid quarantine. The BHTA is calling for rapid antigen COVID-19 tests to be accepted for entry as an alternative to the PCR test.
Certainly we want to ensure that our protocols are both keeping Barbadians safe, our visitors safe, but also reflecting the realities of the virus as it emerges. And we have requested, therefore, that we look at expanding our testing regimen to include the rapid antigen taken within a shorter time frame before travel. We are doing that as a measure that we're seeing that has proven very effective in other markets, certainly in the Caribbean and elsewhere.
Chairman of the Barbados Hotel and Tourism Association, Renee Coppin, ending that report from Barbados Today. The rapid increase in the number of TikTok videos featuring Jamaican children has drawn the attention of a well-known children's advocate. Diane Gordon Harrison says her office will be moving to clamp down on parents and children involved in what is most times slack and improper content. Ms. Harrison says her office has an increase in the number of videos and will be taking steps to first identify the children and then conduct social inquiries into their home situation to determine what is fueling the increase in age-inappropriate content and when there is need for criminal prosecution. The Jamaica Observer reports that she was responding to a question from a guest who wanted to know how parents can deal with TikTok videos featuring toddlers and demonstrating intimacy such as passionate kissing. Gordon Harrison said that a care and protection policy, including interviews with the parents, will decide whether there is need for an inquiry. A group of unvaccinated students specializing in physical education at the University of Trinidad and Tobago are worried that they may be falling behind. This, as the students tell Bavita Gopuchal, some courses are being held at safe zone facilities, preventing them from attending. The University of Trinidad and Tobago has since acknowledged the students' concerns and is looking into the matter.
Latoya Evans is almost at the finish line of achieving her goal of being a physical education teacher. But during her last lap at the UTT Sporting Academy in San Fernando, where she attends, Latoya stumbled upon a problem.
Right now, it's just basically two courses I'm having an issue with. The issue really is that lecturers, or I should say few lecturers, have chosen facilities to host sport courses that where we are required to meet physically, right? They call them practical courses. And they have chosen safe zone.
Because of this, Latoya says she and other unvaccinated students are unable to attend classes for netball and basketball.
We have other sports courses and those lecturers have no issue to facilitate us, right? There is a basketball court and other courses, as I say, they're using that facility. But however, this particular course do not want to use that facility and they choose to use external resources.
The students note that there are sporting zones on the school compound available where the lecturers can engage practical classes.
Why other sports courses are held at the compound, which is San Fernando Tech, there are other courses right now enrolling and they are facilitating students like myself. But there are a few that, as I said, not doing it.
Another student tells us they've been reaching out to the lecturers and university staff offering solutions, but these have been falling on deaf ears.
Yes, we understand that they want to have the face-to-face and the interactive part of it, but if it is that it was done online already, for those of us who are unvaccinated and we cannot go to the facility, why don't we have the option of doing the course online as well? Because you ran it for 2 years prior to this, online.
The students say they feel boxed out.
Out of the 12 weeks, we have 1 day per week for each course. And they state that once you miss 2 practicals or 2 classes, automatically you fail. So 1 week has already passed and there is only 1 week left. And if it is we do not attend, automatically we fail.
CNC3 News reached out to UTT Chairman Professor Clement Imbert, who acknowledged the students' concerns. He explains that the UTT has been outsourcing private sporting facilities for many years. However, these have now been designated safe zones. He assures that the university is working on a solution to ensure that no student is left behind and they can soon engage in practical classes with their peers. Pavita Gopalchan, CNC3 News.
Superintendent of Barbados' prisons, Lieutenant Colonel John Nurse, has apologized to prison officers for the ad hoc COVID-19 testing that took place last week. That testing was ordered following the identification of a new cluster of cases at the St. Philip jail. While the testing was done in good faith, he said, it had not been sanctioned by the management. Last week, outspoken trade unionist and consultant to the Prison Officers Association, Caswell Franklin, said some prison officers were not pleased about a sudden testing mandate at the start of their shifts amid an outbreak at the penal institution. However, a notice dated February 2, 2022, entitled Apology to Staff, which was obtained by Barbados Today, stated that the Superintendent of Prisons sincerely apologized for and deeply regretted any inconvenience caused by the testing they had to undergo that day. Unfortunately, the Barbados prison chief says that prior authorization from the management of the Barbados Prison Service and the sensitization of staff did not occur. In a statement issued by Minister of Home Affairs and Information, Wilfred Abrahams, earlier in the same day, the testing was done. It was reported that 5 COVID-19 cases had been discovered among the tested employees. And now for international news, we join the BBC.
BBC News. Hello, this is Jerry Smith. The American Secretary of State Antony Blinken says a Russian invasion of Ukraine could begin at any time, even during the Winter Olympics. Speaking on a visit to Australia, Mr. Blinken said the US continued to see very troubling signs of escalation, including new forces arriving at the border. He reiterated President Biden's call for all American citizens to leave Ukraine. The Democratic Congressman Jim Himes, who sits on the House Intelligence Committee, told the BBC the president's warning should be heeded.
It's important for American citizens to listen to that because the intelligence indicates that there is a very high probability that Putin will take the decision to invade. It's a sad fact that if that occurs, and there are thousands of Americans in Ukraine at the moment, we don't know exactly how many, but when that occurs, the United States may have absolutely no ability to evacuate people from what would then at that point be a war zone.
The head of the US anti-doping agency, Travis Tygart, says Russians involved in the doping case of the teenage figure skater Kamila Valieva could be prosecuted under US legislation if their actions have affected American athletes' results.
It's either a sinister plot to continue the Russia state-sponsored cover-ups or, incompetence by leaders not to resolve a positive test going into one of the most important events of the world. And at the heart of it is a young athlete who's potentially being abused at the hands of the Russia state or sports system. And we've seen this story before, and it's finally time to wake up and do something about it.
The 15-year-old helped Russia win Monday's team event, but the gold medal was not awarded. Olympic officials are contesting Russia's decision to let her compete at Beijing after it was confirmed she tested positive for a banned drug in December. A rights group in Nicaragua says 7 opposition activists have been given prison sentences of up to 13 years. They were convicted of undermining Nicaragua's national integrity. A 24-year-old student leader, Lester Alaman, who rose to fame after publicly calling on President Daniel Ortega to quit, was given 13 years. Also jailed are a former minister, Dora Maria Telias, who later fell out with Mr. Ortega. Sprinklers have been turned on outside New Zealand's parliament to try to clear the area of anti-vaccine protesters. Here's Michael Bristow.
Sprinklers are usually used to gently water a lawn. Outside New Zealand's parliament, they're being employed to combat hundreds of protesters who refuse to leave. They're angry about a number of COVID-related issues, including compulsory vaccines for workers in some professions. The Parliament Speaker, Trevor Mallard, has ordered the sprinklers to be left on overnight. He said the activists would be more likely to go home if they were wet. The protesters protected themselves by wearing raincoats and dug channels to allow the water to drain away.
BBC News. Iran's President Ebrahim Raisi has said his country is not pinning its hopes on the success of nuclear talks with world powers in Vienna. He said looking to the West had knocked Iranian foreign policy off balance, and his goal was to rectify that. The ongoing Vienna talks are aimed at salvaging the 2015 deal, which gave Iran sanctions relief in exchange for limiting its nuclear program. A teachers' union in Zimbabwe has gone to court to challenge the government's decision to suspend thousands of staff who've not been going to work, citing low pay. On Thursday, the education minister said those teachers would be suspended without pay for 3 months. The United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has urged the international community to strengthen its efforts to protect the oceans. Addressing a summit in the French port city of Brest, Mr. Guterres called for greater action to rein in overfishing and to curb carbon emissions from shipping. The Australian government has classified koalas as an endangered species, as their numbers continue to fall because of climate change, land clearance and disease. The marsupial was listed as vulnerable a decade ago, but that's failed to halt its decline. Here's Simon Atkinson.
Koalas are a national icon here, but they're also in real trouble. The status of the animal had previously been rated vulnerable and has now been upgraded to endangered for Queensland, New South Wales and the Australian Capital Territory. The government says the move means greater priority will be given to conserving the koala, and the World Wildlife Fund, which has lobbied for the change, says the decision is grim but important. It's thought there are still about 180,000 koalas on the east coast of Australia, but some estimates suggest numbers have dwindled by more than 60% in the past decade because of disease, deforestation and devastating bushfires.
And that's the BBC News.
The news came to you with the compliments of Eureka Medical Laboratories.
A COVID-19 PCR test is now mandatory for many routine activities, including travel and return to work purposes. At Eureka, our trained and experienced staff will ensure confidentiality while your test is conducted in a professional and timely manner with results in just 48 hours. So the next time you require an efficient and hassle-free PCR COVID-19 test, call 624-8378, 608-8378, or 623-7233 to schedule your appointment. You can also ask about our house call testing service.
And now to end the news, a look at the lead stories once again. The COVID curfew may be lifted sometime today. The opposition APNU plus AFC and the Speaker of the National Assembly are still at odds over claims that he is biased. Regionally, child rights activists are paying keen attention to explicit videos of children being posted on TikTok. And that's the end of the news. This has been the news, compiled in the News Talk Radio newsroom. For ongoing updates, visit demerarawaves.com, and you can check facebook.com/demwaves and twitter.com/demwaves.
News Talk Radio Guyana 103.1 FM, a beautiful mix of great music